The Rip City Drive.
Nick, good afternoon. It's great to have you on the show.
Sure. Glad to be here.
Well, a lot of things to talk about. I guess we'll start with this. You know, with spring ball right around the corner, what are your expectations? What are you looking for from DJU?
Well, I mean, I think everybody just assumes it's his job. I don't assume that at all. I think Ben Gulbranson's going to put up a pretty big fight. Ben's had a year, to start. I think he's figured out, what it takes to play that position, I mean, I'm curious to see what DJ does under, Brian Lindgren, fixes the things that need to be fixed with him. And, I'm not 100% sure what that might be other than the accuracy issues. But, it's just going to be interesting spring altogether from the quarterbacks because you not only got DJ and Ben, but you got the freshman kid coming in too, Aiden Chiles, who, Beaver fans are pretty darn excited about. And, had it not been for, DJ coming in, I think there'd be a lot of focus on this kid. But, it'll be interesting to see how this all shakes out. I really don't know how it is gonna shake out.
Nick, have you had any indication at all that they might tweak the offense a little bit to accommodate what DJU does? I think maybe he's a little more of a runner than some of the guys they've had in the past. Have you heard anything about that?
Well, I mean, just in general, Jonathan came to Oregon State as pretty much a pro-style guy. And he started out with, Jake Luton and, guys that were pretty, I don't want to say immobile, but they stuck into the pocket. And then Jonathan signed Chance Nolan. And I think that's kind of changed his way of thinking a little bit. The dual threat quarterback, there's something to having a guy back there that can, do things other than just throw the ball and move around in the pocket. And I think that's what he has, done with signing Aidan Chiles. He's that kind of guy, and so I can definitely see them looking at some ways to get DJ, out on the edge and even running him up the middle and running him on RPOs and things like that. I think they're kind of intrigued by the possibility of having a guy that, other than like I said, they've had a lot of these guys that weren't able to run, and now they've got guys, and I think they like that possibility.
We're talking with Nick Daschel from the Oregonian here on the Rip City Drive. Now, in regards to DJU, from some of the people you've spoken with, what have you learned about him? And obviously, he didn't live up to expectation playing for Clemson in that pressure cooker. But what type of demeanor does he have? What type of guy is he? And what do they expect from him?
Well, I'd like to say your guess is as good as mine because I've been asking to talk to him, and so far it's been no. Yeah, I haven't talked to him yet. But
Not surprised.
No, but from what I gathered, though, talking to Jonathan a couple weeks ago about him, and he said he wants to fit in. But that's part of the reason he's kind of hesitant to have DJ talk before camp because DJ doesn't want to be the spotlight. He doesn't want to be the program, and so. I think he enjoys what he's seen from this coaching staff, and from all indications, that he and Ben and Aidan Chiles and those guys all get along really well. I mean, I always find that hard to believe that all these quarterbacks get along really well. But you hear it all the time at Oregon State about, oh man, we just love being in the same room with each other. Hard to believe, but I mean, I haven't seen anything that says that they don't. So. It's going to be interesting, like I said, just to see how this all fits together because I know people thought that, this 10-win season last year could have been 12 wins if they had the right quarterback. I'm not 100% convinced that was the case. I actually thought what might have got them to 12 wins is if Luke Musgrave hadn't got hurt. That guy could have made a difference because they didn't need a whole lot of. They just needed one guy that could make some big catches in big situations, and I kind of think he might have been the difference. But regardless, when Ben Gulbranson is 7-1 as a starter, that's not something you could just shove under a rug. I mean, we ask quarterbacks to win games. Well, I mean, he was 7-1, so that, he does have that box checked off.
I want to ask you one more question about Aiden Chiles. From the scouts, the guys that worked with him at the Elite 11 and know him a bit, he's a guy who can move but throws a pretty football. What are you hearing in regards to Chiles? Are they as excited about him as a lot of the fan base is in terms of what he could be in the future?
Well, sure, but I mean, I think going into this, what they would love to have happen is that, Gulbranson and DJ take over the position, be 1-2, and let Aiden Chiles have a year to develop and whatnot. But you don't always get that. You don't always get that luxury. But on paper, you would think he's number 3, or maybe he's even number 4. I don't know how far Travis Throckmorton's come in a year, but again, there's another guy in Oregon State. They don't allow freshmen to talk to the media until they've done something for several games. So me talking to him is not going to happen for a while. And again, it's just one of those things. I'm curious to see what I pick up when I'm around camp starting March 7th.
Nick, there's all this talk about the quarterbacks, but I think there are some other newcomers, people coming into the program right now that are exciting too. Who else do you expect to get playing time as a newcomer?
Well, they got 5 transfers from Division I programs. So, and there was a reason they brought all those guys in. I think of all the one outside of DJ, and I'm not going to even attempt to say this guy's name, but he's known as Olu, and he's a defensive end from Wyoming, and he had a bunch of sacks and tackles for losses at Wyoming last year. He's only played football since he was a junior in high school, and last year was his 3rd year at Wyoming. So he's only played football for 5 years, and the guy is already, kind of tore up the Mountain West. Now, can he do it at the Pac-12 level? You wouldn't think it would be that big of a leap, but he's a guy that if he brings what he brought to Wyoming this last year, he'll make a big difference, on the edge for their defense. The secondary is going to be really interesting because they lost, 3 pretty key guys, both the corners who probably are going to play in the NFL, and Jaden Grant, who is going to take a run at the NFL, but had been, kind of the fabric of that program. That's an area that's going to get a lot of attention this spring is, how do they replace all those guys in the secondary? And they've got some talent back there, but, some of it's unproven, so they gotta figure that part out this spring. But, I guess another transfer that should make a big difference is Jermaine Terry. He's from Cal. He came in from high school as a pretty highly regarded recruit. And he started I think he started almost every game his first 2 years at Cal. It's just Cal's offense is just not what Oregon State's is, or pretty much anybody's offense. And Oregon State emphasizes the tight end so much. I could see him having a big impact on the roster as well.
Hey, Nick, would you say that secondary is the biggest area of concern going into spring camp, or is it elsewhere?
It's definitely on defense. It's interesting on defense. Up front, I think they're pretty solid. The outside linebackers might be offensive line is the strength of this team, obviously, but I'd say outside linebackers is pretty close second, and the defensive line's got pretty much everybody back, but the inside linebackers, they got a lot of guys replaced there too. They lost both their starters, Omar Spates and Kyrie Fisher Morris. Both those guys are gone, and they also lost Jack Coletto. So they lost, three of their top 4 inside linebackers. So they got to replace all those guys, and they've got some guys that have been waiting, for their turn, and that's college football. I mean, you wait your turn and hope that when you're called, you're ready to play, and so that's what they'll find out in the spring and in August and September. But But the secondary, right? I mean, those two corners were pretty good, and they played a lot of football, and so replacing those guys would be pretty big. I think the guys they've got, they're looking at, I think they're capable, but I don't know that any of them is a Rajon Wright, at least at this point. But we'll find out.
All right, Nick, one more thing, but first I want to give you a compliment. You've come a long way from covering bowling back in the day at the newspaper. I just wanted to say that. You do a great job, and I try to read you as often.
Coming from a former toaster repairman, I take that as a compliment.
I appreciate that you remembered that. Yes, that was quite a job I had. Yes, repairing toasters and electric shavers. But I wanted to ask you about their NIL. How is that coming? Are you getting any feeling for, is it working for them yet? Do they have it in operation? And what's it look like?
Well, there's two collectives. There's Damnation and Giant Killers. And it's unclear as to how much money they're generating. I've, tried several ways asking, what kind of donations are you getting, whatnot. It's coming along. I don't know that it's going to be one of those things where it's going to win over, it's going to win over a recruit, a big guy or a transfer, things like that. They just and they make it clear they're here for the athletes in the program. But they've been reaching out to a lot of these players and coming up with some deals here in the last several months. I know I talked to the Damnation guy not long ago, and he said after the transfer portal closed, they didn't want to make any deals until the transfer portal closed because guys could leave. Well, that closed it was late January. They made like 20 deals in about 2 or 3 weeks with existing players on the football and basketball rosters, and now they've got this association with an outfit called Tree 3, which has some Amazon likeness to Amazon. I'm not quite sure, but supposedly that's a way for boosters and fans to buy things online, and money will get to Apple, gets a cut of the proceeds. So I don't know that anybody's getting rich outside of Jade Carey at Oregon State, but they're making more money than they were a year ago.
Yeah.
All right, you can follow him on Twitter. He's at Nick Daschel. He writes for the Oregonian, covering Oregon State. Hey, Nick, we both respect you a great deal. Keep up the good work, and we appreciate the time.
All right, well, good having me on. Thanks.